Hey everyone, ArchTalko here and welcome you back to Destiny. Now I apologize if my voice is all I'm probably recording this a little too late than it should be, but you know what, this is going to be a really just laid back, chillaxed episode. Today we are doing Patrol 1 out of 2 on the moon. Pretty fun stuff. So today the gameplay mission is basically just for me to complete a couple more bounties and I guess to do a few more of the patrol missions just to boost up our affinity with the Vanguard just a little bit more. So in case you were curious about, you know, what exactly the point of me even doing the patrol is, that's what. Basically just to get a little bit more experience to buff us up for when we go to the Venus next episode. So today, yeah, obviously this is coming to you post-com, but today I kind of wanted to finally address some of the criticisms I have with Destiny. As you all know, or I think should know at this point, I like this game. I like this game a lot. I mean, I've been gushing about it, like, if not every episode, probably like every other episode or so. I truly do believe that Destiny is a great game, but that doesn't mean I think it's perfect. I know it's not perfect. And so, I always kind of like to not be too negative about a game when I Let's Play it, because I feel like a positive attitude during Let's Play videos is usually a more enjoyable attitude, unless it's like a total funny rage thing, but even then, like, that gets really boring if it's done too often, you know? So I'm just gonna take this episode, just get it all out of the way right here, right now. So let's go. Alright, first and foremost, I will agree with pretty much everyone on this. Destiny's story is lackluster, to say the least. They actually take a page out of Dark Souls' book, or, you know, maybe they're trying to do their own thing, where a lot of the game's lore, and I do mention this quite a bit, and I still haven't talked about it nearly as much as I've wanted to so far during the project, but Destiny has a pretty good amount of lore, some like really interesting stuff, some really well-written stuff. The problem is the way you access it, because as you guys have noticed, none of it is present within the game. You can see a little bit of it just in the way the enemies and different characters like interact with you, but a majority of it is on Destiny.net using these things called Grimoire cards. Basically, Destiny has this mini achievement system in-game called the Grimoire system, which basically rewards you with little pieces of lore for completing objectives, like killing a certain amount of enemies, using a weapon a certain amount of times. Anytime you collect a exotic weapon or an exotic piece of armor, actually, I'm not totally sure on that. I do know for a fact that it's every exotic weapon. You get like a little backstory as to like the creation of the weapon that a lot of times will actually end up tying back into like the main lore of the story. Every enemy, every location, pretty much every aspect of the game you can think of has either like a backstory or usually like a really interesting piece of lore to go with it, which is awesome. I love it. I just really hate that you have to go to an external site to even view it, because like a majority of people who play Destiny don't like even know it exists. I feel like it kind of is like a big problem, and I wish it was more prevalent, because again, a lot of the stuff is really interesting, and like in general, it makes the very almost like non-existent like main story of Destiny just seem much more better when you know like kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So again, story, very lackluster, and I feel like a big part of why people are so disappointed with Destiny's story, in part, is kind of because the soundtrack is like the main enemy to the story, because the soundtrack is like, I feel honestly a little too good, you know, during these kind of you know, little cinematic scenes, especially like in the beginning. Story-wise, they're kind of lame, but the music is so epic and sweeping, it kind of like builds you up for this almost sense of like a promise that you're gonna get some awesome, satisfying climax to the story, and it's gonna be, you know, just satisfying in general, which does not happen. Spoiler alert. When we get to the end of the story mission on Mars, no. Doesn't quite do it for like anyone, myself included. So, yeah, story, not the greatest. And I'll just leave it at that. Again, at some point I do want to go, I seriously want to highlight a lot of the really like neater points of the Grimoire, because there's just some really fun stuff to kind of scratch around and find. there. So, with that, let's go ahead. Let's move on to the second point that I see a lot of criticism for, which I kind of agree on, which is the lack of character variety. Now, in a sense, I kind of can see where a lot of people come from, because like when it boils down to it, the armor, speed, and recovery stats really don't make like any difference when it comes down to it. Like the difference they do make, I feel, is just so minimal. Like if you get the extremes of these stats, then you can see like a little bit of a difference, but any more than that, like if you keep it somewhere like in the halfway point or whatever, you can't tell. They really don't matter that much. So in terms of like your characters, and I put this in quotes, stats, there's really not much variety when it comes to that. Every character, you know, has the same grenade. A bunch of grenade types are recycled between different subclasses and different classes, which is kind of a bummer. You know, they had an opportunity for like, what, 18 different types of grenades, and a few of them are basically the same, but just like a different element, which can be a little bit disappointing for people, especially like first unlocking them and getting to test them out. But just the general thing that, you know, every class has a grenade, a melee ability, and a super, and like nothing else aside from that. I can see that being kind of frustrating, but I don't know. To me, like the subclass abilities are more just kind of icing on the cake. To me, the true variety comes from the weapons themselves, and a lot of people feel like the weapons are just kind of cookie cutter, which pre-level 20, I can definitely see. But once you get to level 20 and you start being able to use legendary weapons and you get the exotics, there is a ton of variety. I mean like a ton. And even each weapon class, you know, like the auto rifles, scout rifles, snipers, each one has several, like 6 to 7 different preset like archetypes that go like within that category, which each, like once you really get to play them for a while, you can tell have like their own little quirks, their own little like pros and cons, and which really, at least I feel, maybe, you know, this is different for other people, but that I feel still play differently enough to, you know, make it engaging. And I know this is a criticism video, but I guess I can also make this a an addressing the criticisms and giving the reason why I don't really care, or like I don't mind, I guess. So that's one thing. I feel like they could have done more in terms of making the character class abilities a little more varied, because again, some of them cookie cutter, some of them just kind of not the most like impressive thing in the world, some kind of forgettable. So I would definitely you know, in the future, it's pretty much been confirmed that like at some point in Destiny's history there's gonna be like a third subclass for each character, because there's already like an empty slot for them. And if that is the case, I would love to see some more variety in terms of what character abilities we can actually use. Alright, so I also really want to criticize the lack of variety when it comes to enemies. Because when it boils down to it, you have basically every faction has their like grunt, which is pretty much useless, but is kind of potent with if they kind of like swarm up on you. Kind of. Even though, no, they're still kind of pushovers. Then you have their like minor grunts, you have their like medium grunts, you got their large grunts, you got their super-sized grunts, you have your documentary featuring a guy who eats McDonald's for 30 days and then he ends up getting fat tumors in his liver and it just becomes a whole big mess. You're bankrupt, you're going to Russia to steal the president, and all in all, it's just, it's kind of the saucy of times, it's kind of not the saucy of times. It's Charles Dickens all up in his house, and it's just not good. What am I saying? I don't know. So, but no, seriously, I don't know, a lot of the enemies, even between like the different enemy factions, almost feel kind of cookie cutter. I mean, there are some pretty noteworthy enemies that, you know, really kind of change how you approach them, and, you know, that's cool and all, but when you're doing just so many of the same type of mission, which is another criticism I have, the variety in mission types, which there are like 2 kinds, like no joke. I don't know, the fighting the same enemies, again, the gunplay itself in Destiny, I feel, is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But the enemies, after you play Destiny for as long as I have, it just really, starts getting a little boring to fight the same enemies over and over again, and there's really nothing else I have to say about it. Variety. Destiny, I feel, the biggest thing it needs, aside from maybe a satisfying story, maybe, is variety in like everything. And again, my other criticism, the mission types, you have your, go to this objective, send out Dinklebot. Get story exposition from Dinklebot. Go to next objective, send out Dinklebot. Boom, end roll, cash money flowing in his house. I would love to see more, so many more missions like the Sword of Crota. I mean, not like Sword of Crota, like not copy pasted like every other mission. I mean, like just missions that completely change the mechanics and the dynamics of the missions themselves. Now, I have gotten the chance to play a little bit of The Dark Below, and from what I've played, they actually address this and they actually make the missions themselves interesting, which I am in love with. So far, I'm loving DLC. I've only played the first 2 story missions, I think out of like 5. But so from what I played, they are fantastic. They are exactly what I'm looking for in Destiny's future content. And, you know, if the, hopefully the rest of the story missions and the strike and the raid still continue to deliver on that, kind of mix up how I've expected to like encounter these enemies and deal with them. If the future DLC, I think it's like House of Wolves, and any other future DLCs that they might be wanting to do, if they do the same thing and bring in that variety, I will be the sauciest of lads. Ooh mama, let me tell you something. So yeah, I think that really just about wraps it up. Again, like, the graphics, Destiny is absolutely beautiful. I really wish it, well, I don't know. I almost wish it wasn't for Xbox 360 and PS3, just so, like, the developers wouldn't have been limited by the frame rate, because if I got to play this thing in 1080p, 60 frames per second, hooey mama, that would be amazing. But I'm just a spoiled PC gamer. I can't always have what I want. Either way, 1080p, 30 frames per second, this game is just phenomenally gorgeous. The art direction is superb. Like, just everything about it. They did an awesome job with the visuals. Music, one of the best soundtracks I have heard in gaming quite some time. Honestly, I feel like it rivals Journey. I feel like it rivals Shadow of the Colossus, Mario Galaxy. It is up there as like my favorite soundtrack of all time. I love the music. And I feel like that's something you guys probably know at this point. I'm just assuming. You know, the gameplay itself, it's fun. It's good. It is well made. I feel like it's well balanced. It just feels good to kill things in this game, which, when it comes down to it, is, you know, kind of what a game needs. Not all the time, looking at you, Journey, but most of the time. You know, a game needs to be fun to play, and Destiny is no exception. Once you get to the post-game content, it's addicting as all get out. It's satisfying to progress through that. So, again, really, I would love to see more variety in Destiny. If you guys have any other criticisms of the game, I will gladly talk to you about them in the comments below. Are there, you know, if you've played the game, let me know what you like about it. Just let me know your opinion on Destiny in general. Have you never played it and just think it's an overhyped piece of poop? If so, I can understand, because I know many people who feel the exact same way. And as long as we keep it civil, I am more than glad to just discuss it with you guys. So thank you all so much for watching this. And really, that's gonna be it. So thank you all so much for watching me play. Yeah. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye for now. We see you. Holy cow. See you now. Holy cow. What?